It all started on a Tuesday night a little over a year ago. At the time, I was living alone in a small apartment on the top floor of a 3-story building. It was one of those nights when it had been raining steadily since the afternoon, and the sky was so overcast that darkness came earlier than usual. I had no plans for anything special to work on my laptop for a while. Watch something and go to bed early. The apartment was simple, with a small living room that connected to the kitchen, a bathroom, and 2 bedrooms. I used one as a bedroom, the other as an office. As usual, I put on some jazz instrumentals in the background and sat at my desk to get some work done. The rain beat steadily against the windows, creating a hypnotic rhythm. It was comforting until it wasn't any more around 9:30 p.m. I heard a muffled sound coming from the living room. I stopped what I was doing and listened. It was like the soft creaking of wood being stepped on. At first, I thought it might be the noise from the building, or maybe a neighbor making noise downstairs. The building was old, and strange sounds weren't exactly rare. I ignored it, even, though I thought that particular sound seemed to be coming from inside my own apartment. Minutes later, I heard another sound, this time closer. A faint metallic click. I stood up slowly, my heart racing. I walked to the office door, opened it carefully, and looked into the living room. Nothing. Everything was the same. The streetlight outside gave the room a pale, silent hue. I checked the front door. It was locked, with the security chain in place. The kitchen window closed. But when I went to the room, I noticed something that stopped me in my tracks. The window was half open, and the detail that chilled me to the core was that I never left that window open, especially on rainy nights. In fact, I clearly remember closing it that same morning after it had been very windy the night before. I went to the window and looked out. Everything was dark, the courtyard below completely empty. I closed the window again, locked it, and pulled the curtain. I tried to ignore the growing discomfort in my stomach and convince myself that I must be forgetting things. That maybe the window had been like this since early morning. I went back to the office, but I couldn't concentrate. There was something wrong. Around 10:10 p.m., when the silence seemed heavier, I heard a new sound coming from the hallway. A whistle. Faint. Slow. A high-pitched tone, as if someone were trying to keep the sound as discreet as possible. I immediately closed the notebook and stood up. The whistling stopped. I left the office in silence, and again I saw nothing, but now I felt it. The air was strange, thicker, as if something invisible was filling the room. I went to the light switch in the room and turned on the light. Nothing. No sign of an intrusion, nothing out of place. Still, I decided to check everything one more time. When I returned to the room, my blood froze. The window was open again. Not only that, the curtain was now slowly swaying, as if someone had just walked past it. This time, I didn't hesitate. I ran to the door, took off the chain, and left the apartment, going down the 3 floors without stopping. Down there, I waited for a few minutes under the building's awning, trying to breathe. I picked up my cell phone, called a friend who lived 15 minutes away, and asked to spend the night with him. Before I left, I looked up. My bedroom window was closed. The next day, I went back with a police officer my friend knew. We searched the entire apartment. No sign of a break-in. Nothing disturbed. Nothing. But when he opened the bedroom's built-in closet, there was something on the floor that definitely hadn't been there before. A small mark of dried mud, as if a dirty shoe had stepped there once and then disappeared. Nothing else happened after that. But for several nights, I woke up thinking someone was watching me. And on some of those occasions, even with all the windows closed, I heard that same whistling sound coming from inside the apartment. This happened to me 3 years ago when I was still living in my grandmother's house in the countryside of Parana. It was an old house with a zinc roof, wooden windows, and the kind of nighttime silence that you only find in remote places. I was living there temporarily, taking care of the place after my grandmother went into a nursing home for health reasons that night. It was raining like the sky was falling. Thick drops of rain slapped against the roof, and lightning briefly illuminated the surrounding fields. I had made coffee, wrapped myself in a blanket, and was watching an old movie on the couch in the living room. The clock read 9:17 p.m. when the power went out. Out of nowhere, everything went dark. The TV turned off, the lamp died, and only the sound of the rain and the wind remained. I grabbed my cell phone to use as a flashlight and went to the window. The rest of the street was dark too, blackout. Nothing unusual in the area. I decided not to wait in the dark and went to the kitchen to get candles. I lit two and placed one in the living room and one in the bedroom. The soft light helped, but the cracking of the roof seemed louder now. The rain was beating down hard, but there was something different. I began to hear a kind of rhythmic tapping. Knock, knock, knock. On the roof. Like someone was walking very slowly. I stood, still listening. Maybe it's a tree branch hitting it, I thought. But the sound moved. It moved slowly from the front of the house to the back, and then back again. I felt the chill run down my spine. I opened the back door with the flashlight on my phone, even in the rain. I couldn't see anything in the backyard. But when I looked up at the roof, I saw it. There was a silhouette. A person crouched, motionless, looking at me. I froze. The light from the lightning revealed what appeared to be a man, with soaked clothes and his face covered by some kind of black hood or cloth. I slammed the door shut and ran inside. I locked myself in the room and called the police. The connection dropped on the first try. Weak signal. I tried again and managed to get through. But the operator said the nearest police car was almost 40 minutes away. I tried to calm down, to keep the candle lit and my cell phone charged. The sound on the roof continued. Knock, knock, knock. This time it was louder, like he was hitting something metal on the zinc. I sat in silence in the room for about 20 minutes, until I heard a noise coming from the window, scratching. I approached slowly. Outside, he was there again, on the other side of the window. The candlelight only partially illuminated him, but I could see the reflection of his eyes. Fixed, unblinking. I retreated to the corner of the room, shaking. I tried calling the police. Number again, and this time the operator asked me to stay hidden until the police arrived. Minutes later, I heard what I feared most. The front door handle turning. I jumped out of bed and locked myself inside the built-in closet. Inside, with only my breath shallow and my heart pounding, I heard the door open. Slow footsteps across the room. The floor creaked. A metallic noise, as if he were dragging some kind of object. He stopped in front of the bedroom door. I took a deep breath. I heard the doorknob turn. It was locked. But then he started whistling. It was a slow, repetitive, almost childish melody. It made me feel like I was trapped in a nightmare. I covered my mouth with my hands to keep from sobbing out loud. The whistling stopped. Silence. And then footsteps. Walking away. Front door opening. And closing. I waited a few more minutes until I heard the police siren. I ran out of the closet and opened the window to signal. The police searched the entire property. There was no one else there. But they found fresh shoe prints on the roof, the porch, and even on top of the water tank. Their explanation? Someone from the area trying to break into isolated houses. But to this day, they have never arrested anyone. And every now and then, even though I live somewhere else now on rainy nights, I think I hear that same whistling sound coming from outside. The window. This happened last winter, during one of those cold, relentless rainstorms that seemed to shake the whole neighborhood. At the time, I was staying at my brother's house while he and his family were away on vacation. They had a nice, quiet place in a suburban area, 2 stories, backyard, and just a single neighboring house across a tall hedge. I'd offered to house sit for the week and take care of their dog, Max. I didn't mind the solitude. In fact, I was kind of looking forward to it. A week to myself in a peaceful neighborhood, Just me, Max, and the rain. The first 2 nights were uneventful. I worked remotely during the day, binged some shows at night, and Max usually curled up at my feet. But on the third night, things changed. The storm had picked up heavily. Rain pounded against the windows, and thunder rolled constantly in the distance. Around 10:30 p.m., I was upstairs in the guest room, my temporary bedroom, reading on my tablet while Max slept by the door. Suddenly, I heard something, a soft creak. At first. I assumed it came from the house settling, or maybe the wind pushing against the siding. But then I heard it again closer. I paused, lowered the tablet, and sat completely still. Another sound, this time. A low shuffle. It came from the hallway. I stood up and slowly walked to the door. I opened it, just a crack. The upstairs hallway was completely dark, save for the faint glow from the stairwell nightlight. Max, I whispered. He was now sitting up, ears perked, eyes fixed on the hallway. The shuffle came again, then a soft click. Like a door being slowly closed. There were only a few rooms upstairs. The guest room, the master bedroom, a bathroom, and a closet at the end of the hall. I stepped out quietly, barefoot, and tiptoed down the hall. My heart was racing now, and I was trying to convince myself it was just my nerves or the wind playing tricks. When I reached the end of the hall, I noticed the door of the hall closet, which had definitely been closed earlier, was now slightly open. It was pitch black inside. I stood there for a few seconds, unsure whether to open it or walk away and pretend. I hadn't noticed, but curiosity and fear got the better of me. I slowly reached out and pushed the door open. There was nothing there. Just coats, cleaning supplies, boxes. I exhaled slowly. Maybe the latch was loose. Maybe the wind had nudged it open. I shut the door firmly and turned around. That's when Max started growling. He was back at the guest room entrance. Hackles raised, his growl deep and tense. He stared straight past me. I turned back toward the closet. Nothing. I told myself to calm down, coaxed Max back into the room, and closed the door. I didn't lock it. I figured it was all in my head. I tried to sleep, but I couldn't. Every sound felt amplified by the storm. Every floorboard creak sounded like footsteps. At around 1:45 a.m. I woke up in a cold sweat. No thunder. No rain. The power had gone out, and Max was no longer at the foot of the bed. I sat up. My phone was dead. I had forgotten to charge it. The room was completely dark. And then I heard it. Breathing. Not mine. Not Max's. Coming from inside the room. It was soft, raspy, and uneven, like someone with a congested chest, trying not to be noticed. I froze. I didn't even dare to breathe. The sound was coming from the closet. I had left it closed. I stared in that direction, trying to make sense of it. I couldn't see a thing. But the breathing was real, slow, labored. I slid out of bed as silently as I could, trying not to make the mattress creak. I moved toward the door, every step echoing in my ears. My hand found the doorknob. And the breathing stopped. I bolted out into the hallway, yelling for Max. I ran downstairs, flipping like switches out of reflex, even though the power was still out. I grabbed my coat and keys and ran out into the stormy night. Max was hiding under the porch stairs, shaking. We waited in the car until sunrise. When I finally had the courage to go back inside, everything looked normal except for the closet. The door was wide open, and inside a small corner of the wall had been hollowed out. As if someone had dug a space behind the wall to hide. The police were called. They searched the entire house. Whoever was there was already long gone. There were no signs of forced entry. Nothing was taken, but they confirmed what I feared. The crawl space behind the closet had enough room for someone to stand completely upright, and there were scuff marks inside, like someone had been using it recently. I haven't stayed overnight in that house since, and every time I hear heavy breathing in my sleep, I wake up terrified, thinking that closet is still just slightly open.